for this really interesting conversation around the creative industry in Kenya. We don't speak so much about the creative industry in Kenya, do we? I think it's like a secret society. Creatives talk to each other. We don't know much about Kenyan creative industry, or do we? It's really nice that we'd be having a great conversation around entertainment and intellectual property and the creative industry. There are experts here, people with the best knowledge around intellectual property, and we'd be having a great discussion here, and our panel should be starting any minute now.
There is no, one of the documents that properly describes the role of IP in the creative economy is this UN report, the Creative Economy Report of 2010. The report states that any analysis of the creative economy must consider the role of intellectual property. The report says that IP is a key ingredient for the development of creative industries in all the countries. It is not only a policy tool, but when you talk about IP in the creative industry, it also talks as to the regulatory framework in which the creative industries operate. And then if we have a proper IP system, it can also promote innovation, creativity, and cultural development in a country.
In this particular industry. And one of the reasons is we do not, or have not in the past, considered it to be an actual industry, an actual business. We think it's a nice hobby, we're coloring the world, we're providing beauty, and we failed in school. That's what our society told us. If you're an artist, things did not go well in here, but you're using this one to color the world, right? Training. This is one of the areas where we're not even listed in the tax regime. Like, we don't have a category. We're not professionals, because some of us went to school, studied music, played the recorder, and then we left. And then we went to study a true and dignified subject like law, right? And we left this music thing. But we have awesome artists, we have awesome producers, awesome filmmakers, but we are doing this out of sort of practical experience and not necessarily education. And that's one of the issues. Who is the one to determine how we will be categorized or classified and given a professional ranking or title? If you own the thing you have created, you should be the first person to exploit it. And exploiting could be anything from marketing it, from sharing it, from distributing it, from reproducing it. I'm proposing that we take back the word and we be the primary exploiters of our own works. That means you then are able to tell people it exists, that it is yours, and that you can make some money from it.
Business, making commerce from what you do, I think it's something that across the board, except for businessmen, has to be learned. And sometimes you need help, okay? And I think it is in getting the help that you make your art sustainable. Make it more than a venture that is nice to look at, nice to listen to, nice to play, funky, all those good words, but that is really sustainable because it brings home the beacon.
Germany has the same principle as you have here. The creator, the individual, is the author. That's the definition in the law. As you may know, there's other systems, especially the American one, where you can have an entity, a legal entity, being the author. If the individual is okay with that, if it transfers this right to an entity, which is under European law impossible. So you, as the individual, you are the creator, you own all the rights in the first place, unless, now the bad word comes, exploitation or use starts happening, and you are selling or you're licensing or you're giving permission to certain people to use these rights. The droit moral, which is this beautiful French expression, is also very important in the European Union, meaning that you have your work is protected by law. not to be completely redone or falsely redone or severely damaged. That's a big issue. It also gives you the right to be named. That is also sometimes a very, very important point that people, especially photographers or artists, they don't feel that their name is on their work, even on a side or on a note or something. So you have the, this right to be named is part of the droit moral, or actually not to be named. It's also, it happens that, people are very unhappy with what other people have done with their work, and they don't want to be put their name on it. So you also have the right to get your name away.
So by the time we're done with this session, we know what we should have achieved. Now in this session, we explore how gaming and gamification will affect creative industries in the future. Is it a new opportunity for product prototyping? Will this transform retail? Will gamification and games contribute a new tool in training and birth new careers in electronic sports, more lucrative than traditional sports? So those are the few things that we want to achieve today.
Virtuellen Raum. But for me, I think the creators need a place where they actually can talk about creation and not just about we create a product, we create something with passion, what is passionate, what is heartful, and this is something what also the medium needs. It needs the industry, it also needs the artist, it needs people who are actually pushing the whole medium a little bit more forward. And this is what artists are doing, because they have not they don't have to fear or something like that. They don't have to serve, they're not a big company. They have not a lot of people on the payroll. They're alone or just in small groups. They can do whatever they want and they can experiment. And this is something I want to bring together at the Amaze Festival.
Though this is something that could be interesting in general to consider arts and creativity in the creative industries as a factor of economics. So what they want to create is an economic system for the artists. So if we keep them in the region and if they can build up their industry in the region, we will have an economic system in the region, right? If they can make a living, we will have an infrastructure, we will have people who know how to do films. So that was the financing idea behind it. And after several structural changes in the government in Bavaria, we are now ended up in the Ministry for Economic Affairs, and since a few months there's a Ministry for Digital Affairs. So for now we are hosted by the Ministry for Digital Affairs. How can I do web series for the internet? How can I create something for mobile phones? How do I do an app? So this is something, and I really loved what you're saying, Torsten, and yesterday you, Wolfgang, about the bridge, bridging the gap between technology and art. So this is a kind of claim we have is technology marries content. We want to bring together those silos, meaning that technologists and software developers and people who are familiar with the innovative technologies and the artists and creators who learn how to tell stories. And they might know how to make movies. They know enough about the movie technology and understand the workflow, what they need to do next. But they might not be familiar with how to create an app or what is the skill set to do something in virtual reality. So the idea is we still need educated people who know how to tell stories, who are familiar with story world building, who know how to create content and are really visionary enough to push the borders of technology forward. So I learned for myself, as soon as you give creative people that space to breathe, and that safe haven, being not observed, being not evaluated, being not judged immediately by a person, by an industry person, so that's a good idea, I take it, I buy it. So if you keep the competition out of a workshop like that, they are really super, super, super successful, motivated, and joyful and playful.
I want to talk about this pyramid. This pyramid, it's what we call zero to hero pyramid. Why zero to hero? Zero, if you are a player, you are playing with your sister or your brother at home, you are not a competitive player, but you feel that there is something in you and you can become somewhere, somehow, the best player of FIFA or League of Legends or Counter-Strike. This is the zero part. You can come on our platform, ESL platform, and start to play against zero people like you. And if you are good, you can then pass on the other skill level at a national level or local national level with the Challenger series. This will be competition we will manage at the national level, and if you can win at this level, then you can go to the masters level. Then you can be in the big events like you see in the video at the beginning. So ESL propose now all these tools to allow everybody to become somebody. This is the zero to hero platform. So all platforms, we can play on PC, on console, on mobile, on VR. We have competition on all platforms, all games. We saw that at the beginning, on all levels, zero to hero, all geographies. Okay, for Africa, we have some works, but that's the goal. We tried to do something in Africa 2 or 3 years ago. We'll see that after. We also work with medias. This is our main business model now. Medias are sponsor, but medias are becoming more and more involved in esports.
I didn't know what Desiree was going to present, so this was different from what Desiree, but it speaks to, you know, the presentation we saw before. You see a beautiful map of the world like that, and then the map tells you that North America is making $275 million in esports, China is at 300, Europe is at 200. Then the rest of the world. Africa is linked with the rest of the world. Interesting, okay. Then you go to the next map, and it's the same story, whereby most of their continents have color. Africa is left blank, like we don't exist on, you know, the gaming market. I don't think this is true. I think there is something else we need to ask. Is there a deeper question about why Africa is perceived this way? So, walk with me. Is it a matter about how government policy affects your access to the internet in your country? If so, this map talks about the freedom on the internet. Green means your country is pretty free and liberal about how your people use the internet. Yellow is there might be some restrictions, and purple is there heavy, heavy restrictions on your internet use. Now, based on this, Asian market has heavy restrictions on their internet use. Yet, the Asian market and China is the leader in online gaming and esports. So, it's not a government policy when it comes to this. Perhaps it has to do with something closer to this, the availability of servers on the continent. When you see everywhere else, they are populated quite heavily with servers that are providing services, vital services like domain name servers. This is basically the it's like the phone directory for the internet. When you type www.yahoo.com, these are the servers that link you to the website that you want to visit. We have 2 on African continent. Let's talk about games. This is Black Ops 3. They have 1 server on the continent, and that's in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, if you're in Kenya or Ghana, are you able to compete with something like this? Let me ask. Another question I'll ask is, if you do connect to their servers, despite the bandwidth issues and the latency, if you spend money on these servers, where is the money reflected? Will it be reflected in your country? Will it be reflected in Africa? So when you talk about game revenues that are generated online in the world, where do the revenues from Africa go to? That's a question I'll ask for the audience. Basically, what I'm saying is, the revenues that Africa is generating, Africa is a big spender in games. I'm a big spender in games. I've owned every PlayStation except the last generation, and by choice, not because I can't afford it. And I have friends who are the same way. So, to the rest of the world, my message is Africa is ready to play. The time is now.
Due to societal perceptions about what gaming is, some take it that it's a male-only sport, while others think it's a thing for kids. I've dealt with my parents who, they still give me some really incredulous looks like, yeah, gaming, okay. And I understand it's due to generational gaps. I wouldn't expect them to understand, though they are supportive of my activities. As for being taken as a male-dominated arena, I was talking with one of my friends, then I was like, okay, I need to go on to catch up with some gaming. Then she was like, I thought gaming is for boys. But but I wouldn't blame anybody, actually, because when you come to gaming, I'm going to give you a sectoral overview. As Nathan was kind enough to point out, that esports is the fastest growing industry in, I think, Kenya and Africa. Because if it's generating $1 billion, I think it's about time we took it seriously. We have game development where we have coding, story writers, and all that. And you also have content creators, as you can see with people who stream on Twitch, Caffeine, and YouTube. That's a good niche which people can tap in. And then we have esports players where, for example, I am an esports player for Goethe-Institute.